and to the well-being of this emerging nation. Noah Smith, 1966, calling for research and deep thinking in this area. Now, what Noah Smith called that we must pay attention to, do more research. There are many people, when you talk about cultural values, quickly they start talking about drumming and dancing, wearing of cloth, pouring of libation. Wearing of cloth, drumming, dancing are part. But the issue that Noah Smith called, that we should spend time, do deep thinking, do research, bigger than drumming, dancing, and all the other things. And therefore, let us try to identify where do we go for the cultural values, the indigenous cultural values that we are calling for. Now, I'm just giving an outline. I teach these things in this university and other universities, and you can even do a whole academic year. You will not be able to exhaust what I'm about to present to you. But let's start the conversation from somewhere. So if you are talking about indigenous cultural values, where do you go? Number one is political and leadership values. I will come back to this later. But traditional diplomacy and courtesy values, they are there. Constitutional and legal values, spirituality and moral values, arts, symbol, and craft. You can do this, health and healing values, crisis and bereavement management values, environmental protection and restoration values. We have one of us who has done PhD, Reverend Dr. Kofi Mchi's PhD with us, KUST, is in this area. Communication and information management values, documentation and celebration of historical events, philosophical thought and ideological construction values. And you may know Professor Kwame Gyekye, African philosopher, and University of Ghana. Now his book, Africa Cultural Values. I see Reverend Dr. Apia Samoa here, and he will understand what I'm talking about. Professor Gyekye belonged to this group, Indigenous Philosophy, or Africa Philosophical Thought. That was his PhD. It's difficult reading that book. You read cover to cover, you are not sure what you've read. But the Africa Cultural Values, that book is a bit friendly. Defense and security values, aesthetic and beautification values, marriage, family life, and community building values. So if this year or this church, we are saying we are talking about traditional week, what we have decided just last August, is more than drumming and dancing. It's more than wearing of traditional cloth. We are calling attention to some of this area. But let me come back to leadership values. What are the values that we can identify here? Number one is accommodating, being accommodating, tolerance, hospitality, generosity, legacy-mindedness, sense of stewardship, accountability, wealth creation, being unifying factor, diplomacy, integrity, service. So these are the values, leadership values. And Mr. Chairman, we as a church, we have benefited from these indigenous values in our Christian mission, not only in PCG, but almost every church in this country. But let me focus on PCG here. The Asante Presbytery has an annual meeting with Asante Hene, and January 2020, they celebrated the first 10 years. And during that ceremony, they came out with a brochure. Moderator sent a goodwill message. Asante Hene sent a goodwill message. Let me read a portion of what our own moderator wrote, and is published in that brochure. And this is Professor J.O.R. Mayente. The Presbyterian Church of Ghana's mission to Menchia is as old as the very presence of Presbyterianism in Asante. We recognize that the foremost missionary, Reverend Fritz Ramsia's work in Kumasi would have been more difficult but for the support and cooperation he received from Menchia Palace. Support and cooperation. These are indigenous values. And the moderator affirmed that Ramsia benefited from these values. And in that same brochure, the Asante Hene, as if the two of them met somewhere to compare notes, Asante Hene also in that brochure wrote, Menchia doors have always been open to Christianity and the church. Now, when I get to the prospects, I come back to this statement that Otumfuo wrote 2020, during the 10th anniversary, that Menchia doors have always, not this today, have always, it's like before Ramsia even came, Menchia doors had already been open. And then you continue, we are grateful that the Presbyterian Church of Ghana has not only given Ananum a platform to express the appreciation to God, but to mutually understand, and you call for understanding, that interface. There's a need for church traditional people to have a mutual understanding, and that will bring glory to God. Now the door that Asante Hene says has always been open. Let us go to Agogo. 1869, Ramsia was sent from, where he was arrested through Afram Plains to Agogo. That time, their child was not well, but the chief of Agogo, Nana Samoa, asked the leader who arrested him that allowed them to rest at Agogo 3 weeks. So Ramsia and his team spent some time at Agogo. Now Ramsia wrote this. When we had no more eggs, that's what they were eating, eggs and pawpaw. Time and again, someone who saw our sorrow brought us more. And Ramsia wrote, may the Lord show the friends who help us. At that time, we didn't have a church in Agogo, remember. So the friends who helped them were traditional leaders and traditional people in Agogo. May the Lord show the friends who help us that he does not forget the cup of cold water given to the one of his little ones. And the Lord did indeed begin to show that he had not forgotten the people of Agogo. And you go to Agogo, we have Presby Basic School, Presby Nurses Training, Presby College of Education. Agogo Hospital is grade 1. Now they have a university campus. Sometimes I want to ask, why so many things in Agogo? Ramsia prayed for them. Not only that, when they were leaving Agogo, Nana Asamoah gave his paraquin and careers. Now, even if you're a royal, you don't go to the palace and request that you also want to sit in the paraquin some. But they gave that to Ramsia. And that is why he prayed this prayer for them. You ask why. Asante Hene will tell you, our doors have always been open. This is how the engagement between tradition and Christian mission must look like. There are other traditional areas that will affirm what Otumfuo has said, that Menchia doors have always been open. It's not only Menchia, but other areas. You go to Ekropon, and when Rees was at Ekropon, he was housed in Nana Kwaku Truku's house. The house is still there. The fourth building towards the palace on your left side. 1991, I was a pastor at Ekropon, so I know the place, So Rees was there. And even when Rees was building his house, that was later on named Osiadan, Okwapim people helped him do that. Now you go to Krobodumasi. This is so amazing. I don't know if the chairman is here. They publish their 50th anniversary brochure. Give us a copy. Send it online. The chairperson is not in the room. Oh, you are here. Make your information available. Now, Nene Azu gave the missionaries permission to build a church in his personal farm. Those days, build a chapel in my farm. And that has been documented in your brochure. In fact, I preached at Mile 50 recently. They are also celebrating 50th anniversary. They have a wonderful history. They planted a church in a town. They couldn't find a place for the people to worship. And the chief of the town welcomed the church. This is recent. Come and worship in the palace. Reverend Oforiado, if he's around. He's there. You know, you have more of such. In fact, there's one at Bompata Santiachim here, Nana Dakwa, 1880. He went to Abetifi and requested the missionaries, bring me pastors, bring me missionaries. And he paid for it. It's not the church that initiated missionary activities at Agogo and other areas of Asante Achim. It was initiated by Nana Dakwa, 1880, and he paid for it. The chairperson is here. You may know this history. And you ask Asante, you say that our doors have always been open. So, if I want to sum up, the benefit that we and other churches we have enjoyed from traditional leaders, we've enjoyed hospitality. Those days that even we did not have police stations and any other. They provided security. We have lands. If you come to Swami areas, it's the same with us. But from Swami Runabout to Wesley College to Mofretro to Wesley Girls, that stretch of land all belonged to Methodists. So I ask myself, are you people, why have you collected? They have it. We also have lands elsewhere. We have, and other churches have enjoyed lands from traditional leaders, sense of tolerance and accommodation, acceptance and approval. If you go to Odumase, what Nene Azu did was giving authentication approval. He allowed 3 of his sons to join the church. So any Krobo person felt that, no, I could also join. That's what Nene Azu did. He facilitated Christian mission. And some of them literally provide funds when we are having harvest and other things. So let me come to prospects because of time. And the first area I want us to consider is what this whole area called Christian mission to the palace. Something that Professor Joe Wamante said that it's not new. It's as old as the one of our missionary effort in Asante. Now, when you talk about Christian mission to the palace, it's not new. You go to Chebi, and as far back as 1941, PCG held then synod at Chebi. And during that synod, Sir Rano Foriata I sent a goodwill message. And in that goodwill message, he stated that we should close the gap between the church and the palace and make it possible for traditional leaders to become full members of the church. Dr. Makwe asked a question. I don't know if he's with us.